Well, hello, friends. Let's talk about LitRPG and conflict and the problems that are produced when you factor in the inherent power creep that exists in LitRPG and the trope of the OP protagonist, which is probably the most common trope in LitRPG. LitRPG as a genre, which is it's the genre I write in, has an inherent problem when it comes to power scaling. And the reason there's a problem is because, unlike most normal fantasy, where you might have a sort of a tier power system and somebody moves from one tier into a second tier during the course of a series, in LitRPG, you have a constant ascension, right? A progression upward with your main character from the moment they start the first book until the very end of the last book. And so instead of scaling up once during a book or once during a series, which is typically how most general fantasy works, you have this constant climb where the protagonist's power is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And that means that an antagonist that they faced in the first book likely isn't going to be able to do anything to them halfway through the second book, which naturally creates a problem because you then don't have long-term antagonists. Now, there are a couple of ways that people try to solve this. The first is to have a really powerful antagonist with a bunch of minions, right? This is the classic sort of video game boss monster and a bunch of mobs, and you've got to cut your way through the mobs and fight the sub-bosses, and then eventually you get to where the boss is and you fight the boss, right? This is a very familiar sort of progression. And so LitRPG often uses that. LitRPG also sometimes just has what you might call the powerful uncle syndrome, where, and this comes out of actually cultivation novels, where if you smack somebody, they're going to go back home and they're going to call their big old, their big brother or their powerful uncle, and that person is going to come, and then you're going to smack them, and then you're going to find out that they have a powerful uncle, and so they're going to get their powerful uncle to come and beat you up, but then you smack that uncle, and he's going to get mad, and he's going to go and find his powerful uncle, and just it goes on ad nauseum, and it is honestly a little bit nauseating. So that's the other sort of way that people in LitRPG try and solve this, right? You either have I fight my way through mobs, I get to a sub-boss, I beat that sub-boss, I fight my way through stronger mobs, I have to beat another sub-boss, all the way up until I face the final enemy. Or everybody that I fight has somebody who's more powerful behind them, who was too strong to pay attention to me until I proved that I could beat their nephew. And I think that both of these, while potentially legitimate, again, I don't really like the stronger uncle trope, but both of these, while legitimate ways of handling conflict, sort of fall short of what we want for good LitRPG. So if neither of these is optimal, how then do we handle conflict in face of an MC's growing power? I think there are a couple of things that we can do. The first is that we can just recognize that our MC is OP, and we can shift the focus from pitting them against individuals to pitting them against other kinds of challenges. Imagine you have an MC who's just gotten a new skill that can cut through anything. Throwing him against the, villainous knight is going to be sort of anticlimactic because he can cut through anything. That means he can cut through his opponent's sword, he can cut through his opponent's armor, he can cut through his opponent's head. There really just isn't a good conflict there, even if he has been in conflict with that enemy knight this whole time. But do you know what his new ability can't cut through? It can't cut through space and time. And so if he shows up to fight the knight, and all of a sudden he finds out that the knight's not there, a few paltry soldiers are, but the knight has gone. Instead, the knight is currently raiding his base, or is somewhere else attacking somebody else who is not as strong as the MC, all of a sudden we have real conflict. We have both our OPMC, he can cut through anything, and we have genuine conflict that he now has to wrestle with. I'm in the wrong place, and by the time I get where I need to be, this knight may have already won. And so that's the first thing, is just shifting the focus of the conflicts that we're giving our characters. So it's not just, can I beat you up or can you beat me up? The second thing we can do is we can introduce conflicts that don't pit our main character against a single antagonist, but instead pit them against a system. No matter how strong you are, it is impossible for a single person to successfully fight against a system without tearing the whole thing down. And if your MC is tearing the whole system down, then they're probably a villain. Because the fallout from that is going to be too great. Instead, they have to figure out ways to work with other people to achieve their aims. And I'm not just specifically talking about like their system, like the blue screen that is common in LitRPG. I'm actually talking about society as a whole, the power structures that exist, stuff like that. So these are two ways that you can take an OPMC and you can take this problem of conflict that we have with LitRPG and you can shift it to make it to your advantage instead of to your detriment. Just because you have an OPMC doesn't mean that your conflict has to be boring. In fact, it can be even more exciting because you have the added frustration of a character who could burn everything down, who could just wipe everything out, but doesn't want to. And it's in that struggle of, man, I feel like I should be more effective than I am. I feel like I should be able to do something here, but I'm finding myself powerless. It's in that you can maintain the humanity of your main character, even when they're overpowered, by giving them good conflicts to wrestle with. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. If you have any other questions about this specific topic, put them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. See ya.